welcome into another episode of the Pinstriped Prospects podcast, on to number 64, which, well, we'll get to that in just a little bit. You're listening to this podcast over on SoundCloud, available as well on iTunes, Google Play, and TuneIn. You can also watch video editions of this podcast by navigating over to our YouTube and Facebook pages as well. None of this possible without our good friends over at Velocity Wings here in New York. I'm Alex Zeller, and Yankees fans, I'm here to listen. We're going to start the show just by talking. I hear you. I get it. I understand. These losses to these division rivals have been unbelievably difficult, especially to teams like the Baltimore Orioles, but even to teams like the Boston Red Sox. We're seeing third base coaches yelling and screaming at players. We're seeing our favorite players not on the field. So this show is for you. You're going to see stats, analysis. You can hear from our beat writers. You're going to hear exclusive interviews from some of those prospects, and so much more. But we're going to focus this show especially on the concerns that I've heard from Yankees fans over the last week, and that's solely on pitching. In our farm system in the New York Yankees organization, pitching prospects have been excelling up and down the minor league system, especially in Staten Island, where our very own Ricky Keeler covers the beat for the Staten Island Yankees for us here at PinstripeProspects.com. Well, he stopped in on Wednesday, and he and I got to speak about what's going on in Staten Island as far as the pitching prospects and life in general. And joining us now is Ricky Keeler from PinstripeProspects.com, of course, one of our beat writers down over in Staten Island for the Single-A short season team. Ricky, thanks for coming on.
Happy to be here, Alex. How you doing?
I'm pretty good, but tell me what's going on. I've seen a lot of the standings, and I'm sure a lot of fans feel similarly, where they see the standings and how the team's been doing. They've been up, they've been down. What do you see going on with the Staten Island Yankees so far this season?
Well, they got off to a rough start this season. They were 4-11 in the month of June. Their offense wasn't hitting, and their offense has not been great this season, but their pitching has been the story. They've got a team ERA of about 2.39. They went 19-9 in July. They just won their first game in August as we record today, and when you come out to a Staten Island Yankees game, the rotation is something you've got to see. Nolan Martinez is having a really good season. Howard Cortillo's pitching well. They had Renzi Contreras, who was rising up prospect list, rose up our own prospect list, and went to Charleston. Matt Sowers here, second-round pick from last year. Clark Schmidt just made his debut here, last year's first-round pick. They just had two of the relievers promoted, Chase Hodson to Trenton and Christian Morris to Tampa. So this pitching staff has really been one of the big reasons why they're, as of right now, I think percentage points for the wild card, but it's been a really fun turnaround, and this pitching staff gives them a chance to win every single night.
To you, when you take a look at the New York Yankees, and let's face it, a lot of our fans are big Yankees fans as they follow along on the podcast here, releases every single Monday. Facebook, YouTube, TuneIn, SoundCloud, pretty much anywhere you can grab podcasts from. But nonetheless, pitching seems to be the big part of the issue. Sonny Gray today, as we were pre-recording this for the show this weekend, got booed off the mound, and it's something that's been kind of a concern. A lot of Yankees fans wanted a Jacob deGrom from the Mets before the trade deadline came down, or a big pitcher nonetheless. But seeing a lot of these pitching prospects in the lower level, from what you've been able to see down in Staten Island, is this the focus that the Yankees are having for the future?
The Yankees definitely have a lot of really good arms at the lower levels of the organization. I think it's something they've really emphasized, especially in last year's draft, taking Schmidt and Sauer. This year is more catchers, but they added a lot of pitchers too. Frank German is here, fourth-round pick from this year. He's kind of done both starting and relieving. Rodney Hutchison, sixth-round pick, is here as well, and he's been pretty good in the 4 games he's appeared in. So pitching, I think, definitely has been the emphasis. I mean, they didn't really draft a lot of bats early on in this draft, so that's other than Josh Breaux, who's also here. But I think, pitching is definitely a strength, and it's something if they had made a big deal for deGrom or somebody like that, they probably would have gone to that well to go to outside of the Sheffields and the Abreu's and the Floriols and those guys. So, I think pitching's definitely a strength in Staten Island. Pulaski's got some good arms too, but I like what the Staten Island rotation's done. It's just, like I said earlier, it's every night they may not score a lot as though they have some good players on offense, but they can win any 2-1, 3-2 game that they get into.
Who should we get excited about that's in that rotation? I know you already mentioned Nolan Martinez.
Yeah, I like Martinez a lot. He's not going to wow you with the fastball, but he's got really good off-speed stuff, and I think that's something to keep an eye on. I like Sean Semple, who I just did a feature on, where he's done both relieving and starting. He was the closer on the GCL East team last year that won their championship, and he's really a big precision guy. 27 strikeouts to 7 walks, so he pounds the zone. They don't give up many free passes, which is a big plus. Matt Sauer has had a couple of bad starts lately, but I've liked what he's done, at least in the early portion of the season. Another guy to keep an eye on who really doesn't get talked a lot about is Harold Cortijo. I know everybody heard his.
We spoke about Cortijo last
That's
week.
right. 1.86 ERA so far, 27 strikeouts. He doesn't go deep in as many games as compared to a Martinez or a Sauer or even a Juan DePaula. But this is a guy that's going to go out there. He's going to give you 5 strong innings, and he's going to pound the strike zone. I think that's something Travis Phelps, who's the pitching coach, and that coaching staff has emphasized: throw strikes. And this staff does it as well as anybody.
Ricky, when you look at pitching prospects, I know longevity is a big thing that everybody wants to go. But are we just in a day and age in baseball where the idea of a guy going 7, 8, never mind, a complete game, is that just out of the realm of possibility now, the way these guys are throwing? Should we just be looking at a guy giving us 5 good innings and go to a strong bullpen?
Yeah, I think that's really the case now. It's really the strict pitch count rules, and look, you got to protect everybody's arm. You understand that. You want to see guys with a complete game. I think that's also good about this team. Lately, they've had to use some piggybacking roles with a couple of guys being promoted like Morrison Hodson, but you've seen Sauer go 6 innings. You've seen Contreras, when he was here, go 6, 7 innings. Martinez, I think, has gone 7 innings, I believe, in a game this year. So these starters at a short season level, which is not that common, are going 6, 7 innings. So they're kind of used to this stuff as well, going up into Charleston, wherever they go going forward. So I think that's a good sign, but I agree with you. It's something you're just going to get used to, where guys only go 5, 6 innings, and you have to be the Yankees and build a super bullpen.
Seeing this farm system as long as you have, I remember years ago it seemed like the Yankees were able to put together their team often through free agency. Nowadays in baseball, everybody's doing it through homegrown guys, and we're seeing guys like Judge, Gleyber Torres, Miguel Andujar up and doing that kind of a thing. Going back to that trade deadline, it was a bit underwhelming this year for a lot of Yankees fans. Only J.A. Happ coming up. Obviously, Zach Britton was a big acquisition at closer for the Yankees, but no huge name that's going to really change that rotation overall. Were you disappointed, or are you happy to see the Yankees not exactly selling everybody off in order to get a rental for just 1 year?
I don't see how you can be disappointed, because you have to look at what was out there. Jacob deGrom was not available. Sorry, Yankee fans, he just wasn't available. Zach Wheeler,
couldn't agree more.
Zach Wheeler was never going to be available. That goes to the state of what was out there on the trade market.
No, it just cost too much.
Exactly. So you have to go out there and you get J.A. Happ, and all you give up is Brandon Drury, who you never played, and Billy McKinney, who wasn't going to see much time in the outfield. You get Lance Lynn for Tyler Austin and Luis Rijo, who actually had a start in Staten Island last week and actually pitched well in Tampa. So Rijo's was impressive the short time he was with the Yankees organization. And I also like the fact they added a lot of this international money, and they're getting a lot of these big international guys in this year's class. And that's important, because if the Yankees go out there and spend heavily this winter, they're not going to have a lot of high draft picks. So if they take these international players and sort of make them like pseudo draft picks, if you will, that's going to keep the system as strong as it is in the lower levels, because they're grooming catchers at the lower levels like they did in the draft. So they kind of added the short term, because I like adding Lynn for his ability to get the ground balls, and I think he'll eventually replace Sonny Gray in the rotation. And Happ is just a guy that's going to go out there and give you 6 quality innings, and that's really what this rotation needed. And you keep this system as strong as it is. It's not a top 5 farm system maybe now that Torres and Andujar are up in the big leagues, but it's at least a top 10 farm system.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And I was actually kind of relieved that they didn't sell a guy like Justice Sheffield, who's clearly going to be in the future, a guy like Domingo Acevedo, who spent time in the Bronx too prior to his injury about a week ago. But you take a look at what they've been able to do as far as pitching and stuff, and I know a lot of guys went for international bonus pool money. Is international free agency that big right now?
I think it is. It's something that you can get another area of player development. And if the Yankees can go out there and use all this international money and bring in some high quality players, and they can develop them in the lower levels and start to get them on the rise, that's a plus. That's adding more top talent into your organization in addition to the draft. So if the Yankees are going to be contenders for the next 4, 5, 6 years, they're not going to have many high draft picks. They're not going to get a chance to pick in the top 10 and add an impact player that way. So they're going to have to do it with getting some of these top 5, top 10 guys like OCL Rodriguez, the pitcher they just signed out of Cuba. You have to add those players into the mix, put them in your system, see what they can do, and it sort of duplicates what another team might do drafting high, but not having the high bonus pool money that the Yankees would have. I think they did a good job. While I would have liked to see him get a prospect for Adam Warren because Jerry DiPoto gives away prospects like they're nothing. I don't know. I'm surprised Seattle still has prospects because DiPoto makes so many trades. But other than that, I think they definitely supplemented their system. We'll have to see how these guys do. It's going to take a while to see how they develop, but it's not a bad strategy by Cashman.
Absolutely. He's Ricky Keeler, our very own beat writer for the Staten Island Yankees here for PinstripeProspects.com. I'm Alex Zeller. You're listening to the Pinstripe Prospects podcast here on your favorite way of either watching or listening to podcasts. Thank you so very much for making us a part of your weekly programming. Ricky, we talked a lot about pitching so far, but is there anyone with a bat in their hand to get excited about down in Staten Island?
A couple guys I like, Alex. Junior Soto's one. He's got 5 home runs, 18 RBIs, and he's got a cannon in right field. Basically, teams still try to run on Junior Soto's arm, and he makes them pay every single time.
Wow.
That's how good his arm is, and he can play anywhere around the outfield. They have Andre Chaparro's got 4 home runs. They don't really hit a lot of home runs, at least in the Penn League, although Wagman's got 4 as well. Eric Wagman, the first base. But I like the speed they have in the top of the line. You got Alex Jr., who they drafted out of Tennessee Tech. He can create havoc on the base. He's got 5 steals. Brandon Lockridge, struggling a little bit with the average, I think only 216, but he's got a lot of speed when he gets on base. So they have Lockridge they got in the draft, like I mentioned. Another guy I kind of like, who's been sneaky pretty good, is Jackson Thorson. He's a catcher out of St. Mary's. So you have Josh Breaux and Jackson Thorson. Their catchers have done a nice job this season working with the staff. I think that's also very important. So not many guys are going to hit for a high average, but they have guys that if you throw them a fastball, they will take advantage of it. And I think that's at least a good sign is a lot of these guys learn how to hit the off-speed pitch and work on that area of their development. But when they get a fastball, they usually know what to do with it.
Is this because we see a lot of strong bats a little higher in the minor league system, AA, AAA?
Yeah, I think so. I think you look at this level, it's a lot of younger players. It's a lot of players still trying to figure out their games. But I think when you look at this level, it's plate discipline you like to see as well. And if I would throw another guy like Kyle Gray in there, who may not be having a great season, hitting only 147, but he's drawn 15 walks and only struck out 20 times. So he's putting the ball in play. He's just not getting the results. And then that's a case where you wonder at this part of his development, is he a guy that's going to get too frustrated by not getting the results, or is he going to continue to maybe eventually those balls will fall into play and the average will go up. But you could still see some good talent with these players. It's just the fact that they had 8 runs the game I was at today. So you're starting to see the offense. It can put up quicker numbers when it needs to, but more often than not, they're going to win the game with a lot of small ball, getting runners over, and trying to win those 1-2 run games, which they've done a good job of doing, at least since July 1st.
Does this idea of small ball help a player's development in your estimation? Because you look at today's baseball, whether it's major league level, even the minor league level to a certain extent too, and all you see is home runs and strikeouts.
I think so, because it teaches them a different element of the game. You see guys bunt even, and it's something that is a lost art now in the game where nobody bunts anymore. And when you bunt, everybody gets mad on Twitter that a player decided to bunt and move runners over. But if you learn that aspect of the game and add that to your arsenal, it's going to help you down the road. Maybe you're an infielder and you become a utility player, and that helps you in that way. So when the big home runs aren't coming and the big RBIs aren't coming, you still do something to help your team. And I think player development and helping the team go hand in hand.
Is that a focus of this coaching staff? Because you can lay down a bunt and win a game. I know people get mad on Twitter, but in today's world of defensive shifts, unless you hit a home run and you don't want to hit into the shift, it seems the only way to get out of this is to, bunt it down the way, all the way down to the left field wall in some cases.
Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's an exact emphasis by the coaching staff, but I think you're seeing, like, for example, in today's game I was at, it was a 1-run game, and Lino Diaz, who's the manager, decided to pinch run Miguel Flames, who had a couple hits for Andy Diaz, who had a lot of speed. Diaz stole second. They got our run out of it, eventually got some key insurance runs that they needed in the game. So that's something that can help along the way where, hey, I got a man on second, just get a base hit and drive him in. That's, I think, another big key, especially at this level where you don't want to swing for a 3-run homer every time. If you can get a hit or move a runner over or do something like that, it may not show up on your box score. Your average may not look as high, but you got a productive out and help your team.
But is there a focus more on situational hitting as opposed to hitting a 3-run home run?
If I had to say, I would say that's probably the case. It's not especially at this level, it's tough to really stress for home runs.
Sure.
It's more just trying to do the little things, maybe get more singles and doubles in that regard, than trying to hit a home run every single time. Although guys have power, like Kanan Smith hit a mammoth 3-run homer today, and he's got a lot of power in his bat. But I think definitely you're looking for more of just making consistent contact and going about your routine while not trying to go crazy and hit the ball over the wall every time.
Is there anyone that's really severely improved this year that you've been able to see so far? Someone that really improved from the beginning of the season until this point now? Granted, it's only been a month.
Yeah, that's the tough part, just because, again, in short season, it's really what you've done. I would say, from an offensive standpoint, I mean, one of the guys I like is Andres Chaparro, who I did an interview with today. So hopefully you'll hear that on the Pinstripe Prospects podcast. I think he's a guy that has good power, can play. Definitely his defense has improved at third base. I think that's huge when you can have a strong defender at the hot corner. He has four home runs, but a lot of those home runs have come in late game situations. And while that's another thing that really you don't stress as much in the lower levels with development, that's something to think about where you're able to at least slow the game down and get those home runs in big spots. So he's another guy where the average might not be as high, but gets the RBIs you need him to. And I think on the pitching side, I mean, a guy I like today is Juan DePaula, who maybe gets lost in the shuffle a little bit compared to when you look at the Sowers and the Martinez.
Right.
But DePaula had a rough sixth inning, but through 5 shutout innings, I like the emotion he showed in the mound. He did a fist pump after he picked off a guy in the first inning. I thought that was really cool. But he's a guy that can throw 92, 93 at the fastball, got up to 96, and throw a little bit of a curveball. So he gets a little bit lost in the shuffles, maybe the sort of the 4th or 5th guy you might rattle off in their rotation. But when you can have that kind of talent, as long as he gets it over the plate, and I know Diaz was talking to me earlier today about how he's just trying to get him to sit back when he gets into a jam and sort of slow down, get your composure. If he can do that with the talent he has, he's a name to watch going forward.
Interesting. That was Lino Diaz, manager of the Staten Island Yankees?
Correct.
Awesome. Before we let you go, one of my favorite things in minor league baseball happens to do with promotions, and in all of baseball, the name change the Staten Island Yankees have done where they become the Staten Island Pizza Rats is one of my personal favorites. How have those nights been down there?
Oh, they've been packed. I've covered probably out of the 3 or 4 that have been happening already. I covered maybe the one I was at was a crazy packed. I think a lot of people have embraced the name as much as it has caused some public outrage by a lot of people. But it brings
I think
people
Rob Pimsner and I were on Twitter combating a whole bunch of people. It got bad for a while.
Yeah, but it brings people to the ballpark, and I think that's important. And if it gives you an extra reason to go, I mean, I know Saturday night there's Pizza Rats and Harry Potter night, so you get a combination of both.
Double whammy.
That is going to be, I would assume, to be a packed house there. But overall, I think people have enjoyed it, and they go to the ballpark. They enjoy the cool association with the Pizza Rats, and I think all in all, it's done pretty well. Honestly, for me, it's actually done better than I thought it would.
Is it just the outrage machine, the whole idea behind people being mad about it? Have there been people around the ballpark that really don't like the team name that you found? I know you're from the community. I'm curious how the community feels about the name change for a couple games.
I know the community did not like it at first, so that has to play in a part a little bit. But I think most people, they enjoy going out there. I know the players love it. The coaching staff embraces it. And it's just, if that's something that gets people to go watch them play, I think that's something you got to be all for. I mean, you look at those, the names weren't, when they had the contest, those names weren't the greatest, but I think Pizza Rats is definitely unique, and it definitely has caused a good public. I'm trying to think of the word here. Basically, a good way to go to the ballpark, a good marketing play for them, I should say.
A good way to go out to Richmond County Savings Bank Ballpark over in Staten Island, New York.
Mm-hmm, absolutely.
I'm going to have to get me a hat. That logo is cool. Okay, bring me back a hat, Ricky.
You gotta get the hat. They used to do. You get the stuff in like the pizza boxes. I definitely think they did a good job with.
I'm like super stoked on it. I've been holding back. I'm like, because I used to work for the team back a couple years ago. So before I joined Pinstripe Prospects, there's a bit of a disclaimer out there. So I have a couple Staten Island Yankees hats, but like since they came out with this logo, like I'm not gonna lie, shameless plug. It looks like a must buy to me. We are not sponsored in any way, shape, or form by the Staten Island Yankees. Anything left to add with us before I let you go here, Ricky?
Two other names I'll throw out there. As I mentioned, like all the guys getting promoted. Daniel Alvarez got promoted to Charleston. He was a guy that had 28 strikeouts and 3 walks. So that's a guy that really can pound the strike zone. He's got a great fastball. Another guy who I think has improved because we've seen a little more is Aaron McGarity. He's got 10 strikeouts to 1 walk in 7 games. And just a cool story of the organization is Ryan Lidge. Now, Ryan Lidge is long gone from Staten Island. He was here in the beginning stages of the season. This is a guy who's played for Charleston. He's played for Pulaski. He's played for Tampa. He's played for Trenton. He's played for Staten Island. And it was really cool to catch up with him in the early stages of the season and pick his brain on how quick you have to learn these pitchers because he's learning guys night and day and talking with J.D. Closer, the catching coordinator. This is a guy that's been a big help to a system that really does not have the upper catching depth that you would like it to have. And that's why you're seeing Kyle Higashioka as backup to Austin Romine now that Gary Sanchez is out. So Lidge is a guy I think I would keep an eye on because he's getting that experience in Tampa and Trent. He's a 2017 draft pick. Keep an eye on him. I think he's done a good job. And defensively, he's got a really good arm behind the plate.
You heard the man, Ricky Keeler, beat writer for the Staten Island Yankees for us here on PinstripeProspects.com, taking the time out to join us here on the Pinstripe Prospects Podcast, episode number 64, presented, of course, by Velocity Wings. And, Ricky, when you would host, you always like to take a number and point it toward a player, but the only 64 that I can remember in recent history is Rob Refsnyder, who we were just talking about a little bit earlier off the air. Reminds you of what current prospect?
Well, 2008, he wore this number for 1 year, but Francisco Cervelli wore it number 64. You have Domingo Germán wore it in 2017. Ben Gamel wore it for a little bit. Nick Goody wore it for a little bit. So it's not a number that gets used very often, but you'll find an occasional, if you go on Baseball Reference, which is a really cool tool, and you will find cool tidbits of people that wore a number even for 1 year or even for a couple months even.
Pick your favorite Yankees show, episode number 64. Ricky, thanks so much for dropping by.
Anytime, Alex. Thanks for having me.
All right, thanks, Ricky, once again for dropping by on Wednesday. The interview he was talking about before was with third baseman Andre Chaparro, currently assigned to the single-A short season Staten Island Yankees. Chaparro, age 19, signed with the Yankees as an international free agent back in 2015. He's a 6'1", 200-pound righty that has begun to see some success at the single-A short season level. The third baseman is currently batting .230 with 4 home runs and a .669 OPS. Our very own Ricky Keeler, who we just spoke to, was able to catch up with Chaparro with Staten Island Yankees manager Lino Diaz translating for us. Ricky, take it away.
First question I had was, what was it like for you to be signed by the Yankees?
Para ti, ¿qué tal fue haber sido firmado para los Yankees? ¿Qué tal fue esa experiencia para ti?
Bueno, yo creo que fue una de las experiencias más satisfactorias para mí, y también bastante increíble, para mí era increíble de creer porque, los Yankees, un equipo que es muy conocido y que mayormente la mayoría de las personas conocen, para mí fue algo grande, lindo y satisfactorio.
To me it was something incredible, just the fact that I was playing pro ball, but with the Yankees, with a team that has that kind of reputation, tradition, it was incredible.
Who were some of your favorite players to watch growing up?
¿Quién era uno de tus jugadores favoritos cuando tú estabas creciendo?
Yo creo que mi jugador favorito siempre ha sido Miguel Cabrera, Me gusta su forma de jugar y más que todo a la hora cuando él toca resolver con su bate pues es una de las cosas que yo he venido siguiendo pasos de él. Claro, no puedo hacer lo mismo que él porque cada quien es diferente, pero o sea, me ha gustado siempre él desde pequeño.
You know what? One of the players I always admire is Miguel Cabrera because of how he plays, because of what he does, not only with the glove but with the bat. You know, and I always admire him. You know, so that's one of the guys that I try to play like. You know, I can't do a lot of the things he does. You know, but I like to see him play and he was the guy that I followed when I was growing up.
How would you evaluate your season so far?
¿Cómo tú evaluarías tu temporada hasta el momento?
Bueno, yo creo que ha sido he dado más de lo esperado, de lo que yo esperaba. Creo que las cosas me han estado saliendo muy bien. Al principio de temporada empezó un poquito mal, pero sabes, cosas de que no me puedo concentrar en el principio y pude hacer mis ajustes durante la temporada y lo que va de temporada. Pues ahorita, por lo que en un tiempito para acá, o sea, no me ha ido muy bien, pero trato siempre de ayudar a mi equipo en lo que yo pueda, más que todo en la defensa. O sea, si no puedo con el bate, tengo que hacerlo con la defensa.
Excellent. You know what? A lot of the things have happened, been a little better, you know, than anticipated. You know, I always try to help the team one way or another, and defensively it's been great. I've learned a lot of things, you know, defensively. And I started a little rough offensively, you know, but I was able to do some things and help my team, you know, when I needed to, you know, in some of the games. And right now I went to a kind of a bad spell right now, you know, but as long as I can keep doing something and I keep learning and I keep doing something for the team, you know, that's what I'm here for.
How would you describe your approach at the plate?
¿Cómo tú describirías el approach que tienes tú cuando vas a batear?
Bueno, creo que mi approach no es simplemente, diría yo, como el mismo de todos, ¿sabes? Salimos a buscar nuestro picheo, que es la recta y que no podemos fallar, y pues si lo fallamos, o sea, es cuestión ya de luchar el turno, pero siempre salimos con la mentalidad de no fallar nuestro picheo.
My approach is very similar to probably most of the hitters' approach. I'm looking for a fastball, you know, and if I miss it, you know, then I have to battle with whatever else I got, but that's my approach.
You mentioned some of the improvements you've made defensively. How do you think, what specifically have you improved on defensively from last year to this year?
Tú mencionaste, dice, algunas de las mejoras que tú has tenido defensivamente. Dice, ¿cuáles son unas de esas mejoras que tú has tenido del año pasado en comparación a este?
Bueno, yo creo que este año ha sido bastante exitoso para mí en la defensa, en lo que va de año, y pues gracias a mi trabajo, gracias al trabajo de los coaches que se han puesto, o sea, que me han dedicado tiempo, ¿sabes? Y pues lo he sabido aprovechar. O sea, yo creo que la diferencia del año pasado a este no es mucho, solo que este año o sea, he tenido más confianza a la hora de defender, y pues solo trato de hacer las cosas bien para ayudar a mi equipo.
You know, I think this year has been great defensively, to be honest with you, compared to last year, and that's been something that happened because I mean I have worked very hard at it, you know, and obviously some of the coaches have helped me, but I worked very hard at it. But the biggest thing, you know, biggest difference between last year and this year is the confidence. It's the confidence. I have a lot more confidence, you know, and it's showing. You know, I play so much better, you know, and I have confidence now to make plays.
What's been the biggest challenge for you since you started professional baseball?
¿Qué ha sido el desafío más grande que tú has tenido desde que comenzó la pelota profesional para ti?
Bueno, una de las cosas más difíciles para mí, digamos que tengo dos, ¿sabes? Una de las cosas más difíciles ha sido tratar de pasar la página, ¿sabes? Es algo que tenemos que hacer todos los peloteros profesionales, y si un día no te va bien, simplemente hay que pasar la página. Son cosas que tenemos que aprender desde que empezamos esto, y ya que tú lo aprendes, entonces ya empiezan a salir las cosas bien.
You know, one of the most difficult things for me in professional ball is not to dwell on things. You know, once something happens bad, you know, we have to go to the next one. You know, and that's been the hardest thing for me. But now I understand that, you know, that it happens. You know, we have bad days, we learn from it, and we move on.
Last year you hit 2 home runs in a game against Greenville for Pulaski. What was that moment like for you?
El año pasado tú bateaste 2 honrones contra Greenville en Pulaski. Describe cómo fue esa experiencia para ti.
Bueno, yo creo que es algo que, como te digo, o sea, no me esperaba esas cosas, son simplemente que uno trabaja en su swing y son cosas como te dije que hablamos ya de la pro, ¿sabes? Uno sale a buscar su recta y cuando la ve por ahí uno trata de hacer un buen contacto y ya si la bola salió y pues si el año pasado pude conectar 2 jonrones es por mi mentalidad, ¿sabes? Salí a buscar mi picheo y tratar de hacer un buen contacto con autoridad.
You know what? I wasn't trying to hit these home runs, and I still not. You know, I had the same approach, and it was great that happened. You know, but it's the same approach that I have now. You know, I go and look for my pitch, and you know, and I put a good swing on it, and you know, whatever happens. But it was a great experience. You know, obviously, anytime you do that, it's very good. But that wasn't something that I was trying to really do, and you know, I never go over there expecting to hit 2 home runs either, you know. So I just go there and expect, you know, to get a good swing, you know, and to get my fastball and to have a good approach. That's it, because I can control that.
What are your goals for the rest of the season?
¿Cuáles son tus metas para el resto de la temporada?
Bueno, yo creo que mi meta para el resto de la temporada es seguir aprendiendo, seguir haciendo mis ajustes hasta lo que termine la temporada y tratar de que mi equipo siempre gane, que es la meta. ¿Sabes?
The goals for me is to keep learning, okay, to keep making adjustments, okay, and to keep helping my team to win games.
All right, thanks, Ricky. Let's stick with Staten Island for a moment and take a closer look at right-handed pitcher Clarke Schmidt. Schmidt was selected with the 16th overall pick back in 2017 when he was still recovering from Tommy John surgery. He came to the Yankees from the University of South Carolina, going 4-2 with an ERA of 1.62. At the time, he was ranked 2nd in the country. Taking a look at his scouting report, which you can also see on pinstripeprospects.com, Schmidt has a fastball that sits between 92 and 94 miles per hour, even reaching up to 96. He reportedly has a good slider and curveball as well. His changeup needs the most amount of work. So far in 2018, Schmidt spent some time in the Gulf Coast leagues before coming to the Staten Island Yankees. In single-A short season so far, Schmidt is 0-for-1 with a 2.25 ERA in 4 innings pitched. After his start, our very own Lawrence Krieger was able to talk to the righty. Lawrence, take it away.
Congratulations on your start. Being with the Staten Yankees, congratulations on your start tonight.
Thank you.
So what was your reaction when you were assigned to New York? Assigned to Staten Island, sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I was excited. I was happy to get out of Tampa and be able to, get out of here and see. Obviously, be out here in the city is awesome. It's great. I'm excited to be with the club and ready to get going.
Okay. So obviously you're recovering from Tommy John surgery. The question probably everybody asks you: how do you feel now?
I feel great. I think my stuff, as far as like velocity and just pure stuff, came back early. My early on down there in my rehab outings, like probably early on in my live BPs, I was like 92, 93, kind of getting the feel for it. And then when I started getting live games, my velocity was jumped up to like 94, 96, back to like kind of normal. And then off-speed stuff's been real sharp, so I feel really good. And I mean, there's obviously you're not 100% yet. It's still early. We're trying to get the feel for the game still and kind of slowing it down. And like tonight, I felt like once I got in the stretch for the first time tonight, I kind of got out of my sync and my mechanics, started to walk a few guys. So stuff like that, like you can't really practice that in bullpens and stuff like that. So that's like the adjustment. You're still the learning curve. You're still trying to get used to.
Obviously, you heard about your Tommy John surgery at a very high leverage point in your career.
Right.
What was your reaction when you heard you were having it when you were about to go for free draft?
It's tough. It's a big blow, especially when you're having a really, really good year, and there's obviously high expectations for the draft, and there was a lot of hype going into it. But I mean, you kind of got to take it in stride. If I was going to sit back and mope about it and complain about it and ask why me, I don't think my rehab would have been as good as it's been. So I kind of took it in stride and said, all right, I'm going to put my nose to the grindstone and get after working and try to kind of treat it as like a long off season. Just worked hard and a lot went into it. So to be back here today and throwing in games is a blessing from God.
When you spoke to the Yankees and they were telling you that they were going to draft you, what was your reaction?
It was, elated, obviously. To be drafted by such a storied franchise, and you hear about the lineage, obviously, and everybody knows what a great franchise it is. to be taken by the Yankees, it's almost like a dream come true. And these guys have treated me so good, and everyone from the training staff, the rehab coordinators, Greg Pavlik, and Dave Colvin, all the guys down there, they kind of took me under their wing, and they worked real hard with me, and so I couldn't be more thankful for those guys.
Were you a Yankees fan growing up, or what was your connection to the organization?
Not really, you obviously, like I said, you know about the Yankees and their history, but me being from Atlanta, I grew up in Atlanta, so I knew I was always a Braves fan. It wasn't never like, I never really rooted for the Yankees, but now I guess you could say I'm a Yankee fan for sure.
So what kind of pitches do you throw? What kind of movement do you expect? And what velocities are you seeing now? And what velocities do you see when you're at 100%?
Normally I'm a fastball, change, curve, slider type of guy. Like I said, my velocity mainly for the past outings, my average velocity has been like right around like 95. So my stuff's been really good as far as stuff like that. My curveball is probably around like 82. It's a harder curveball with like a high spin rate. I throw kind of two different sliders. One I can throw for strikes in any count, and then one I throw for like a put away slider. And then I change up. And like I said, the velocities on all my pitches have been really good. And I think once I start getting a little more used to the game situation, I could even see probably my fastball taking up a little bit more. Because, I've been up to as high as like 97, 98 in college, so I feel like that's going to come with more endurance and the more you get used to game ready, But for where I'm at right now, I'm really happy, and I know I'm kind of ahead of the curve as far as velocities and stuff like that.
I think we heard that the spin rate on the curveball was about 2,600 RPM.
Okay.
Is that kind of what you expect?
Yeah, I've always had a really sharp curve. I guess I'm assuming that's probably higher than, I think the MLB average is like 2,300 or something like that. So it's been a really sharp pitch for me always. A pitch like that for me. That's what I want to work on for as far as throwing more strikes with it. Because it's so sharp, it's kind of harder to command. But like the slider is something I can kind of throw in any count. But I've always had really good. Like growing up, I was always a breaking ball guy. I never really threw hard. And then I got into college and started throwing really hard. And I was like, I kind of fell back on. So my game kind of took a whole another level because I was also throwing hard and I was able to throw good breaking stuff. So that's always been one of my main things is being able to throw good breaking, being able to spin the ball well.
Who was your favorite pitcher growing up, and who do you kind of model your game after?
Favorite pitcher growing up, probably like Kershaw or Kershaw definitely, like Max Scherzer, and probably DeGrom is one of the main guys I model my game after. I kind of feel like we have similar pitch styles, me and DeGrom. And, I love watching him and the way he pitches, attacks hitters, and obviously those guys' work ethic is through the roof, and how intense they are on game days, and being able to watch them grow, it's pretty cool to watch them. And it's a great generation right now to be able to learn from those guys and watch and kind of pick them apart when they're throwing on start days. So I really enjoy those guys.
So what are your goals for the rest of the season? Since obviously you just got here.
Right. But, goal is definitely, number one goal is just stay healthy, being able to go out there week in and week out and have consistent starts and try not to be too result oriented, obviously, but myself, I'm a big competitor, so it's hard not to worry about your results, but I'm also I'm trying to go out there and compete and just stay healthy. That's the number one thing for me is staying healthy. And then I understand next year hopefully will be a big year for movement for me as far as levels and affiliates and stuff like that. But this year, my main goal for sure is just staying healthy and being consistent week in and week out.
With the proximity of this ballpark to Yankee Stadium, first, have you been to Yankee Stadium yet? And does that serve as a motivation?
Yeah, I actually, last year, me and Gleyber Torres, we went up there. We both had surgery by Dr. Alchek, so we went up there and got checked, and then we got to tour the Yankee Stadium and got to go through the locker room and all stuff like that. So it was really cool. And yeah, whenever you go there and you see it, especially when you're in the city, I found myself looking. I don't know if it was the third inning. I found myself looking over in the city, and I was like, I wish I can get over there as quicker than I want to be over here. So it's definitely motivation. It's good to see that, and it kind of puts a little hitch in your butt and says, all right, I want to work a little harder just to get over to that level.
That clubhouse, there was one Gamecock and Jordan Montgomery. There were two others that you played with that have been with the organization. So Taylor Widener has been traded since.
Right.
Don Tompkins-Williams. What have they been able to say to you?
Montgomery and Widener, all those guys, they kind of took me under their wing, obviously, because I played with them in college, and Montgomery's always giving me tips and kind of helped me out whenever I needed to, and especially Widener, and I mean, all those guys always are reaching out to me, checking up on me, and so it's always good to have someone you know in the organization, especially someone you play with and someone you're so close with because you go to college with them. So to be able to have those guys helping me out whenever I need it and kind of having a familiar face to see every day is obviously really good.
Is there anybody in the clubhouse that you know well at this point, or are you just
over here?
A lot of new faces?
I mean, everybody from spring training and stuff like that, and you get to know them as far when you're coming up the levels, and a lot of guys are kind of in the same draft class, some aren't. But no one like, you've been with them your whole life, but you kind of form when you're playing with them every day and you're spending time with them every day, you kind of form relationships pretty quick. The bond it grows quicker than normal. So to be able to be around these guys every day you get to learn about them a lot quicker. So I do have obviously we're all friends in here, so we're all treated like a family.
I mean, I guess, do you know if there's any kind of an innings limit for you, or it's just what the coaches tell you?
It's more pitches right now early on. I think my pitch count tonight was right around 60. But as far as total innings on the year, I don't think there's an inning limit. I think they want to obviously build me up and get me back to, where I'm not fatigued and later in the innings. Obviously that's a big adjustment as well coming off of this. It's you kind of hit an invisible wall in the 4th and 5th inning. You're all right, you kind of get tired, and that's just part of the process. So I think kind of breaking through that barrier is the main thing for me right now.
Lawrence Krieger, who also covers the single-A short season beat for us here at PinstripeProspects.com, was also able to catch up with Staten Island Yankees manager Lino Diaz about Schmidt and how he did after his last start.
Appreciate it.
Okay, so I'd say the main story tonight is Clark Schmidt making his Staten Island debut. What did you see from him tonight?
I thought he was really good. I thought some very good breaking balls. I saw a lot of movement in the zone. Saw a lot of good things, to be honest with you. He seems like a guy that's he's going to be tough. It's going to be tough as he continues to get healthier, and he continues to climb up the ladder. It's going to be a tough one.
Looked like he was in the zone a lot tonight, had some trouble putting away hitters who some lengthy at-bats. Do you think that's just because he wasn't locating properly, or was it he's still rehabbing and stuff isn't fully there?
Oh, I wouldn't say that rehabbing part of it. I would say, it's just a little bit of both. First time here, and everything. I thought some of those, some of those pitches were close, where it could have been, gone either way. But the stuff was there. And it was good to see. I saw him, in reality, he really didn't have a tough time until the very last inning that they pitched there. But the stuff is there. It was good. It was good to see him healthy. That's what we really care about right now, is to see him healthy. I think he was very happy to see himself, throw what he did today.
Was he scheduled to only go 4 innings? Was it a pitch limit, or?
Yeah, with him coming back and everything from injuries, there is we're always protecting our guys. Even the guys that are built up already, we're always protecting them. We have pitch counts for them, so we have always a system of protection for them. And I wouldn't say protection, but a system to keep them safe, healthy, basically.
Do you project to keep him at the same innings limit, or as he gets stronger within the team, you'll probably lengthen him out a touch?
Yeah, I think that as he gets stronger, he's going to get built up a little bit more and more, But even when he's, we're going to be very cautious with him.
One thing that we did notice, we talked to the TrackMan person, it was like a 2,600 RPM for the curveball, about 2,500 for the fastball. Are those numbers you kind of expect from him?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't really checked that, as far as what he was doing before. That's something that we will take a look at into it. But so I couldn't tell you, right now whether that's something that we're expecting or not. I don't know where he was at before, So, but the one thing is the stuff is there, and that's the great thing to know the stuff is there. Yeah.
Last question about Schmidt. Did you have a chance to see him in extended, or how he was working before?
No, not at all. I did not get a chance to see him in extended. He was, in that process coming back from being in the DL and everything. So I did not get to see him pitch at all.
One kind of odd note that happened during the game: Luis Rijo was traded mid-game. I believe it might be the first time in Staten Island Yankees history that has happened mid-game. What was the environment in the clubhouse and the dugout?
I think some people knew what was going on, some others didn't know. I was out at third base, when I saw that happen. Obviously, you don't like to see your guys, go, but at the end of the day, it's baseball, and hopefully it presents a good opportunity for him. He did a really good job with us and down in Pulaski, so it should. We are helping our big league club, and hopefully we'll get him a good opportunity as well.
It happened very early in the game. Did it have any effect on the team later on, especially the offense? Didn't put any runs on the board?
No, I don't think so. I think we just, we face a guy that, he was kind of crafty, to say, and he kind of got us off balance a little bit, and we had a tough time basically, getting some runs in. That's all.
And another injury question, Josh Bro only played 5 innings. Was that expected again?
Yes, that's part of his return to play program. He will go a little bit. I think next time in his progression, he'll gonna DH, and then he'll have a day off, and then he goes back again into the field again and catch. I think it's 7 innings, and then so there is a progression for him to return to normal.
Do we expect to see him in the lineup tomorrow?
No, probably not tomorrow. Tomorrow will be a day off since he was on his legs today. We think we have the option to DH, but I don't foresee that happening.
And I haven't had a chance to look at the board yet. So the rotation's obviously going to change a little bit with Rijo gone. First of all, was Cortillo scheduled to piggyback today?
Yes.
He was.
Yes.
Okay. So it's
Sauer,
Paul tomorrow, then Hutchison to end the series?
All right.
Okay.
That's correct.
Actually, yeah, one other question. Since it was Chin Ming Wong Day at the ballpark, he played here for 2 seasons. Does that have any motivation for the players, seeing somebody who played here had this kind of success Wong had?
Definitely. I mean, who he was here. I think a lot of the guys, remember him, for what he did out there. And, I think it was good for them to see him, and it's good for them to see a guy of that stature here, coming to this park. So I do think it's very good for them, and it's motivating for them.
Did you have a chance to talk to the team?
Very little because of the timing of the whole thing. I think he talked to a few guys. He came in, I think, at the clubhouse. I didn't get a chance to say hello to him because of the timing again. But once again, it's a great thing, the players see that guys like that coming in. I think it helps them, motivates them a little bit,
Okay. All right, thanks, Lawrence, for all your hard work down in Staten Island. To finish up the show, we'll bring it up to AA, where our very own Matt Kardos, who covers the Thunder beat for us here at PinstripeProspects.com, dropped in on Thursday in order to talk some Yankees baseball with us. We're being joined now by Matt Kardos, our very own beat writer for the AA Trenton Thunder. Matt, thanks for jumping on with us today.
Yeah, of course, Alex. Glad to be here talking some baseball with you tonight.
Absolutely. Tell me a little bit about Domingo Acevedo. We spoke about him in weeks past. Obviously, he had that one-day call-up. Now he's got this injury issue. Has there been any update about that?
Hasn't been too much clarity other than that they don't think it's too serious, but I think at this point in the season, and given his storied injury history, I think it's something they're going to be super cautious with, especially anything having to do with his arm and his pitching arm in particular. So I think that's something that they're going to be super cautious with moving forward, and it wouldn't be surprised me if they just end up shutting him down for the rest of the season. I think that's definitely in the discussion and up for possibility, but of course now the team is on the road for the next week or so, so I won't be around them to get an update probably till they get back, but it didn't sound like they were too concerned when they spoke about it last homestand. They just said they thought that they were being more cautious with it than anything, but anytime that a pitcher comes out of the game complaining that he couldn't pitch through it anymore, I mean, it's definitely a little bit concerning. Apparently a bicep issue. So it's something that I think, especially he's already had a blister issue, and he missed 6 weeks this season with just a blister on his finger. So being now that this is an actual part of his arm, I think it's something that they're going to be very conservative with. So, I mean, based on where we're at in the season, there's only another month left plus the postseason. I guess there's always a possibility that he could come back, but it wouldn't surprise me on the flip side if they end up shutting him down.
Have you had the opportunity to speak with him since the injury?
Not Domingo personally. I know that the one game when I wasn't there last week, the other writers who were there, I believe Austin, who obviously covers the Thunder with me for Pinstripe Prospects, I believe spoke to him, and he said that it got to the point where he felt something, and he tried to pitch through it, but he knew it was something that he didn't normally feel. It wasn't something that was just part of pitching. There was a problem, so he felt that it was tight, and he came out. And X-rays I think were negative as far as any kind of structural damage. It's more of tightness, but it's just something that he couldn't pitch through.
We'll definitely keep updates. Looking at you, of course, on Twitter and keeping at Pinstripe Prospects in order to get any updates on Domingo. But moving on to other pitchers in Double-A, we've seen this a lot this year at the Yankees, calling up guys here and there, a long reliever in Double-A. Has this happened a lot in your experience since you've been covering Double-A, or is this just the group of guys they have down there?
In terms of guys going from the Thunder up to the major leagues?
Yeah.
It's happened a few times. I know last year it happened with Ronald Herrera. He came up for a day, got sent back down. I think he came back up again for a couple days, came back down. I could remember back, I want to say in 2014 or 2015 with Brian Mitchell when he was at Double-A and still part of the Yankees organization. He went up for his major league debut, went up, I believe, on a Saturday, didn't pitch, came back down on a Sunday. Of course, we've seen that now twice with Ryan Bollinger in Trenton. He's gone up twice for one day, didn't get a chance to pitch and came back down. Now we see it with Domingo, who's gone right from Double-A once up there, didn't pitch. And of course, Lois Sega earlier in the year went up, and then of course he stuck, but quite a few guys that have gone right from Double-A. I will say guys that have just gone from Double-A up to the big leagues, I think this is the most that they've had in a season. This is my 7th season there. I don't think more than one is gone in a single season that I could remember. So, I mean, for three or four guys to go up in a year, that is a little bit out of the ordinary.
For sure, and every time we post one of these updates where someone's getting that call up from Double-A to the bigs, I see the same thing. What about Justice Sheffield? Why do you think he's getting overlooked in these kind of roles? Is it because he's traditionally a starter? Is it because they have more stuff down in Double-A? What, in your estimation, is going on with this?
I think the fact that I don't think it has anything. I don't think it's an indictment on Justice Sheffield. I think when the Yankees call up Justice Sheffield, they want it to be for good. They don't want him to come up for a day. They don't want him to come up for a start, or they don't want him to come up to pitch an inning and go back down. At the end of the day, this guy's their top pitching prospect. We once spoke of a lot of the depth and the immense depth of the organization. That depth's not really there anymore after trades and injuries and what else have you over this season. I mean, the pitching haul in terms of prospects right now is hitched to Justice Sheffield. I know Brian Cashman made a few radio appearances today, and he admitted that they love Justice Sheffield. He said, quote, "I don't like Justice Sheffield. I love Justice Sheffield." So, I mean, that's pretty high praise for him, and they know he's going to be up there sooner than later. I know Cashman said today that he couldn't really put a timetable on when he was going to come up, but it wouldn't surprise me if they wanted to. He's going to have to be put on the 40-man roster to call up, and I think the situations that have arose in the last month or two where they brought these guys up, Bollinger, Acevedo, these guys where they knew it wasn't really a long-term scenario where those guys were going to be there. When they call up Ryan Bollinger and have that name in mind, they know they're only bringing Ryan Bollinger up for one night. When they bring Domingo Acevedo up, they know they're only bringing him up for one night. So it's a lot easier to do that with a guy that you don't really have a problem sending back down. But I think because that they have so much invested moving forward in Justice Sheffield that he's not a guy they want to bring up for just one night and bring him down. When he comes up, he's a guy that they want to be there for good.
In your estimation, is he ready for that?
I think he's damn near there. He was really good in Trenton to start the year when I saw him. Had a few minor things to work on, command and stuff like that. But just moving ahead and as he's progressed, I obviously haven't seen him up close and personal since he's gone him to AAA. But just looking at the stat lines and watching what I've seen and reading reports and talking to people who see him, I mean, he's about as about as ready as a guy who's in AAA is going to be.
Who else in AA right now? I mean, we spoke about Sheffield, obviously. Who else pitching-wise excites you? Because when you hear about Yankees fans and what they complain about, or not necessarily complaints, but what they're concerned most about is pitching, especially with the news we've recently gotten about Sonny Gray.
Yeah, the guy who stuck out to me, and to me has been the story for the last month or so in Trenton, is Michael King. I believe he's 23. They acquired him from Miami in the Garrett Cooper, Caleb Smith deal. It was, I think, the first deal they made during the offseason. They got back Michael King, and he's just been nothing but impressive. What sticks out to me is he goes deep in games. He's made 11 starts now for Trenton. In 8 of them, he's gone 7 innings or more. Guy's a real innings eater, and he generates a lot of ground balls. I think this year he has like a 48% ground ball percentage.
Wow.
In his first career, he's a 61% ground ball guy. So he's a guy who generates a lot of weak contact, pitches to contact. He's not going to blow people away with strikeouts. I mean, he could get it up there and strike a guy out when he needs to, but his calling card and his MO is to generate weak contact and ground balls, and he's done an unbelievable job of that. And he's really stuck out to me as a guy that I would definitely pay attention to moving forward.
Is that someone who should have a bigger role in the organization? You know, pitching nowadays, we take a look at it, everything seems to be either a home run or a strikeout nowadays. Seeing a guy go for a length of time is something that's kind of rare.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's something to be said for that, especially in the age where so much money and time and resources are invested in building a bullpen. As you see, the Yankees have
the best in history.
Yeah, have a 4 or 5 headed monster, pretty much comprised of some of the better closers from the last couple of years: Robertson, Chapman, Britton, Betances. I mean, these guys would all be headliner closers in any other organization. And when you could put a closer out there in the 6th inning, you don't really have to tax your rotation. And a lot of people say, "Oh, Sonny Gray's not pitching well," or CC's getting old, and he's not. You only need the guy to give you 5 innings. And even on a bad day, if he goes 4 and you have to pull him in the 4th, you have 5 closers who you could throw out there, give them an inning each. So I think that was Cashman's thinking when he pulled the trigger on that Britton deal was, if I'm not going to get a frontline starter, the next best thing I could do is just bolster my already strong bullpen to now where the guys that you saw pitching the middle innings, guys like Chad Green, and they were obviously made Adam Warren expendable, but just guys like that now. Chad Green, you don't need Chad Green to pitch the 8th inning more. Chad Green could pitch the 5th now. Chad Green could pitch the 6th now, and that guy could close on any other team. So bullpen's really stacked, but back to the point, I know we got a little bit off track, but just when you have a guy who go out there and you know he's going to give you 7 or 8 innings every night, that just saves your bullpen for the next 4 days. So when you don't have to tax the bullpen, it just goes so far in terms of the way you construct the roster and the arms that you need down there in the bullpen. You don't have to keep guys or you don't have to rely on guys as heavily, and you could keep them fresh moving forward. So it's definitely a lost art and definitely something you don't see that often. So I'm curious to see how King closes out this season and see if he maintains that bulldog mentality.
For sure, so definitely keep your eye out. My question, we go back now to, we were talking about the trades a little bit when we got a bit off track, but let's head there right now. We take a look at the acquisition of Britton. You take a look at what they did with J.A. Happ, and you said it before, Brian Cashman did not sell a lot for a frontliner, real big starting pitcher, someone like Jacob deGrom. I know you said it, I've said it, it just wasn't going to happen. The Mets are going to obviously want way too much for that. But taking a look at what they did, were you happy with the trade deadline, what they did? Because a lot of other teams might have just sold out the entire farm system just for this year.
Yeah, I think they did really well for what was out there, given the cost of doing business in the market right now. And like you said, Jacob deGrom, the rumors are out there earlier in the spring. Oh, he's going to be available. The Mets stink. The ship is sinking. They're going to sell him off because he's the only good player they have, and they need to restock the farm system. I mean, in a perfect world, if the Mets played in California and the Yankees played in Florida and they weren't rivals, I mean, I think there's no teams that match up more perfect for a deal, considering
Sure.
the amount of depth that the Yankees have stocked in the cupboard and the talent and controllability that Jacob deGrom still has. So it's just a matter that these teams were never going to link up. I don't think, just knowing the way that the Mets do business across town, the Wilpons were never going to be able to swallow the pill of watching their homegrown ace put the Yankees over the top to win a World Series. And you could look at it from vice versa. I don't know that Brian Cashman was going to, just the fact that to acquire Jacob deGrom, I think in fairness, you have to start that conversation with a Gleyber Torres or a Miguel Andujar. And if you're not going to give one of those guys, you have to have the Mets pick any 4 or 5 prospects off the top of the system that they want to. And I don't think Brian Cashman was at a point that feels that desperate where he was going to do that. Gleyber Torres is an all-star talent. He's an all-star talent in the first 2 months that he's been in the big leagues.
Could be second baseman for the next 15 years.
Yeah, it's a potential. I'm not saying it, but just talking to people and people, this is a potential Hall of Fame type player that you could build your team around for the next year. So I don't think it's too crazy to say that. So, but Jacob deGrom's the best pitcher in the National League, maybe all of baseball. Goes out there and gives you 7 innings every time out and gives up 1 or 2 runs every time and comes out with a loss. The guy's got to be pretty much perfect every time out that he's out now, and he's signed low salary. He's signed for 2 more seasons beyond this, which is all the more attractive. It's hard to really compare the value in other deals that have been pulled the trigger's been pulled on for the last 2 years, because you don't really see a kid at his age in his prime traded with 2 years of controllability. Right. That really what dictates the value is how long you control him for. And I don't think that deal was right for the Mets to make at the time either, because that organization is in flux, and you don't really know who the general manager is to pull the trigger on that deal. Who do you call up the phone and talk to? Is it Omar? Is it Rico? You don't know. So I think if the Mets are going to, they might not know. So I think if the Mets do decide to pull the trigger on a DeGrom deal, which I don't think is all that crazy to think about considering where they're at, but I think you're best to leave that for the wintertime when you know who your GM is. If the manager still, you're going to have to clean house, restock, and if you're going to move him, let the new GM who you trust, who's going to be there moving forward, make that call, not the guy that you think is going to be out the door in a month and a half to trade probably the best player you've had in the last 10 years. So I just don't think there was a deal to be made there. And outside of that, other than Archer, who really you didn't know if he was going to move till the last hour, and then again, it's an interdivision trade. We saw a lot of them, but they weren't really high-profile deals. Britton obviously went to the Yankees, but that's an expiring deal. You didn't really see a controllable, big-time player move within a division anywhere. So
that you're going to have to face for multiple years.
Yeah, exactly. So
that's the key when you look at it.
Yeah, I think if they were going to acquire Archer potentially, I think you institute the Yankee tax just for doing business with the Yankees and trading him into division. So for the price that they paid to get Happ, I don't think it was all that bad. I think Drury's a starting major league player. I think he's a quality player. There just wasn't a spot for him, and that's the advantage that the Yankees have over a lot of other teams, that he's a good player, but he's not a necessary player. They're well stocked, and that they just dealt from their depth. And obviously McKinney, I think he's a good 4th outfielder type in the big leagues. Probably was never going to get an opportunity long term with the Yankees. And again, he's probably a guy that he's going to get significant time with the Blue Jays. So for an expiring contract who has historically pitched well against Boston, fitting that he's going to miss his start against Boston. Yeah. But that's one of the primary reasons for acquiring him. But overall, I think they did well in all the deals that they moved. They dealt from depth. They didn't trade any. They didn't trim any of the top half of their farm system away to get any of the talent that they did. So I think they did well overall.
Yeah, I think I agree overall. Taking a look at some of the, I don't want to say minor trades. Every trade could be major for an organization. But you saw a lot of guys dealt for international bonus pool money. Is international free agency just where it's at nowadays?
Yes. I said that to myself. I was talking to a couple people the other day. I said, to me, the biggest thing that sticks out about this deadline is not just the Yankees, but a lot of the deals that you saw made from all the other
Major League Baseball.
Yeah, a lot of the return you're used to. I could remember back like a decade ago, a lot of the trades were always for player to be named later or cash considerations or whatever. Now it seems that a lot of the deals that you're having legitimately good players moved, and your return is international slot money. And if you look around the league, a lot of the premier talent out there are all international players who were signed as international amateur free agents. And I think now that that's the direction where a lot of teams are going, they're kind of taking a step back and analyzing what other teams who are successful around baseball are doing and how they become successful. And I think it all starts with you sign these kids at 16, 17 years old to not even big-time money, but substantial money. And obviously you're only slotted a certain amount of money. So if you could acquire more money, it's pretty much like another draft pick that you're adding through the amateur draft where you see college and high school players taken. It's just they're from other countries. So it's pretty much like another draft. So when you could add to your bonus pool and bring a kid in at 16 and throw him in the farm system for 5 years, by the time he's 21, the kid's already been in pro ball or developing in your system for 4 or 5 years. That just seems to be the route that a lot of these teams are going. So it just looks like that the Yankees and all these teams around baseball are really putting an emphasis on international scouting and player development. And the more that you could keep that constant flow of talent, like you said, the Yankees made a couple minor trades and they dealt prospects away. Caleb Frere and Josh Rogers and Dylan Tate and guys like that. I mean, those are all arms that you took out of the system. I mean, you make 3 minor trades this year, 3 minor trades next year, 3 minor trades last year. I mean, they all add up. So if you're not keeping that constant influx of talent coming in and not constantly refreshing it, you're doomed to one day be kind of in a position like the Red Sox are in now, where you just made deal after deal and stuff. And you look back 2 years ago, the Red Sox had the top farm system in baseball, and now they're in the lower half. I mean, they're competitive and they have the best team in baseball right now, but eventually they're not going to have the best team in baseball, but they're not going to have the depth of the farm system that they had because they dealt a lot of it away to get Chris Sale and guys like that. So I think the Yankees are kind of in a unique position because they're competitive. The core is pretty much homegrown, and they still have a really good flow of talent. But Brian Cashman, I think, understands that he's going to have to make trades during the winter, next deadline. He's going to be in a position to contend every year, and you're going to have the assets to part with. So just to keep that constant flow of talent, I think the international route is where they're spending a lot of their resources.
Yeah, or to build into CC Sabathia isn't going to pitch for New York forever. Maybe that's a Justice Sheffield kind of a position. A lot of Brett Gardner isn't going to play forever either. Eventually, Jacoby Ellsbury is going to come off those books. Eventually, you got to think there could be more homegrown guys down the line, which has really come into how good this team has been for a lot of guys under control and not making big money.
Yeah, for sure. And then the Yankees, because they have so much depth, and a lot of these guys in the system are quality players, but as you well know, you can't keep all of them, and eventually that goes away. You have to add them to the 40-man roster. If you have a major league core of 20 guys that you know are going to be there, that really only leaves maybe 4 or 5 expendable spots every winter. And if you have 10 or 12 good prospects, you kind of have to narrow it down to which ones you want to keep. And that's kind of what the Yankees have been doing for the last 2 years, is kind of trading the guys that they're quality players and they could pitch on big league teams or they could play on big league rosters, but they just don't have the room to do it with respect to what they already have in tow on the roster. So the Yankees this year especially are going to have a lot of 40-man roster decisions to make, and a lot of those trades that they made for slot money or the minor trades like getting Giovanni Gallegos off the 40-man and Josh Rogers, who they dealt in the Baltimore deal, he was coming up on being 40-man eligible, as was Cody Carroll. He was going to be 40-man eligible. They traded Caleb Frere. He was going to be 40-man eligible. And then by trading Shreve and Warren, it also opens 40-man roster spots. So you're going to have to shuffle the deck at some point. If you plan on having Sheffield's going to have to be protected. Adams is going to have to be protected. 2 guys that I think they forecast to be a big part of their rotation for the coming years. These are guys that they're going to have to add to the 40-man roster. So just look around baseball now. A couple guys that they've had to deal in the last year or two. Jay Cave, he was added to the 40-man roster over the winter, and they obviously moved him to open up a spot. He's now playing regularly in Minnesota. And go back last year, Ben Gamel, Jeffrey Ramirez now in the Baltimore rotation. Ben Gamel's a mainstay in Seattle. Just to name a few guys like that who really were good players, and the Yankees knew they were good players, but they just knew that they only had so many roster spots and couldn't keep them all. So that plays into their thinking as well when they make some of these trades.
Absolutely, and that brings us into the Rule 5 draft, where I see a lot of doom and gloom around this whole area. I don't think it's so stressing, though, because just because a guy isn't protected doesn't mean someone else is going to take them from you. How much did the Rule 5 draft, in your estimation, play into what we've seen over the last week or two?
I think it played a little bit into it, but like you said, and I've pointed out, I pointed it out on Twitter last week when a lot of these trades were making, because that's the comeback that a lot of people make when some people like a trade, some people don't like a trade, and
sure.
That's
the fun of it.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
Why fantasy baseball's out there.
Exactly right, and I know that there were some people who weren't a big fan of the Britton deal and weren't happy with dealing Dylan Tate. Some people are a big believer in Dylan Tate, some aren't. Whatever the case.
Right.
Josh Rogers also went in that deal. And a lot of people point out, oh, well, they had to trade them because they have to be put on the 40-man or they're going to lose them to the Rule 5 draft. And that's not true. They'll be left unprotected for the Rule 5 draft. One, you have to have a team who likes that player a lot and make the decision to take them. Two, they would have to stick on that team's major league roster for an entire season. The odds of both of those things happening are pretty slim. And then I looked back because it prompted me to look back, and I think the Yankees, since it's either 2013 or 2014, they've had 10 players taken in the Rule 5 draft, and 9 of them have come back before the season even started. So the odds of them being taken and actually sticking are slim. The only one who got taken and stuck was what the hell's the kid's name? The one for the catcher, Torrens, Luis Torrens. Right. Was taken by San Diego last year, and they had the luxury to do that because they had like 10 40-man roster spots open, and they were the worst team in baseball and won 60 games all year. So they had the luxury to carry 3 catchers and stick Torrens on the bench for pretty much the whole season, and now they get to keep them and send them to the minors. But most teams, even if they're rebuilding teams, they don't have the luxury of just stashing, especially a pitcher or a guy you want to have as a position player when injuries happen and you need a fresh arm. It's really hard to pick a guy and hide him for an entire season. So just because the Yankees have all these 40-man roster decisions to make, even if they leave some of them unprotected, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be taken, and then it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to stick on the rosters if they are taken. So I think it's a good gamble. It's ammo to trade. Like you said, a lot of the guys that the Yankees have traded over the last couple of years, they go on to get added to the 40-man, and they stick and they play every day on a major league roster. But let's be real. This is 2018. This is the New York Yankees. The New York Yankees aren't like the Seattle Mariners. They're not like the Arizona Diamondbacks. They're not like the Baltimore Orioles. The Yankees go out there and they want the best players that they can get at every position. And if they could trade a guy who's a marginal or just an even average major leaguer to put an all-star player in that slot, they're going to do it. And that's pretty much what they've done here the last 2 years.
I'm glad you said it, only because everyone's talking about, like, oh, the barn's going to burn down with this Rule 5 draft. And, I mean, there's a threat of it, but it doesn't seem like it's an imminent doom, which a lot of people on Twitter seem to get to.
Yeah, for sure. And, I mean, if it happens and the Yankees lose 10 players in the Rule 5 draft, you tip your cap and say, you did a great job developing 10 major league players, and it's just a testament to the system. I think they're prepared to lose them if they have to. You could only have so much talent for so long. You can't stash a guy in the minor leagues for 10 years, and then when he's 30, say, "Oh, I've had him in the farm since he was 21. He's now 27. Let's call this guy." It doesn't work that way. And I'm glad it doesn't work that way. The way the system is set up this is all around baseball. The way it is the team benefits from not paying you any money. It benefits from having you under control pretty much your entire prime.
and they benefit from being able to add you to the 40-man when you're ready. And the team wins in the first half of your career, and then you win the second half of your career. When you're pretty much at the peak of your prime or maybe past your prime and hit free agency at 31 or 32, that's when you make your money, and that's when a team is paying you for what you've done already, pretty much. So a team really gets the advantage in the first half of a player's career. That's the way I've always looked at it. And then when you hit the market, whatever sucker's paying you for the second half, they're pretty much paying you for what you've done already for another team. That's the way I've always looked at it, and that's the way I think a lot of teams look at it now. You don't see the money thrown around in free agency like you did 10 years ago.
No.
Just because every team knows now the model and the way to win. And we've seen it now with the Astros, the Royals,
The Cubs.
the A's, the Cubs.
The Mets to a smaller extent.
Smaller extent when they were successful a couple years ago. And now you're seeing it with the Yankees. The model is build through the farm, develop your own, especially pitching. Pitching's at a premium and it costs money. If you could develop, like you said, the Mets, when they went to the World Series in 2015, that was a rotation of 5 homegrown starters who were making
Nothing.
$900,000 apiece. When you don't have to dive into the free agent market and pay $150 million for a starter, it allows you to allocate that money elsewhere. So if you need one more big bat to set you over the top, that's where you could put that $150 million. So I think now free agency is viewed as something where this where you get the piece, the bullpen guy, the 4th or 5th starter to round out the rotation, or the 34, 35-year-old guy who could DH for me for 2 or 3 years and hit me 30 home runs. I think that's more of what teams look at as free agency. You're really not going to make the money now that you used to in free agency. So I think teams now are also looking at locking up their guys long-term and buying out their arbitration years just so they don't hit free agency and don't have to pay a premium to allow them to hit free agency. So it's just, we could go on for hours. The game has just evolved.
Sure.
The game has just evolved so much now to where it's all about player development and less, especially now it's also, we haven't even talked about the luxury tax threshold, and the Yankees are really make a conscious effort to stay under that tax and keep a payroll under $200 million before they have to pay that tax. And I think they've really done a good job of sticking to that and sticking to their guns and not going over that. So I think a lot of their moves play into the fact of staying under that number, and they don't want to kind of eclipse that mark. So there's so many different factors that go into it, and whether it be Rule 5, contract status, player development, international money in return, there's so many factors that go into it. But overall, the Yankees do an excellent job of kind of balancing it all out to have a good major league team, a good kind of core moving forward, assets to be competitive for the years moving forward, and the farm system being well stocked. They kind of do a great job of all of it.
He's our very own Matt Kardos, beat writer for the AA Trenton Thunder. I'm Alex Zeller. We're taking a listen here inside the Pinstriped Prospects podcast, episode number 64. Matt, before we let you go, on the hitting side, is there someone you're excited about in AA that we should keep an eye out for the remainder of the season?
I wish I could say yes, but I will say I'm excited to see Brandon Wagner, who just came up from Tampa. He's having a really good year down in Tampa. He just came up last week. I think I only saw him for a game or two. So he had 20 home runs down in Tampa, which is a tough league to hit home runs in. And he had 20, which was second in the league when he was promoted to Trenton. I think I read somewhere in the Tampa media notes that I think 22 is like the Tampa single season as a Yankees affiliate is like the single season record. I think is 22, and he had 20 before he came up. So I mean, kid who showed, and he's not a big guy. I mean, I talked to him and I've seen him. He's not a big guy. He's big enough, but he's not guy who has 20 home runs in the Florida State League. You think of a big slugger or a
first baseman.
A big bulk type guy, but. I mean, this is a guy who's playing first in Tampa, but he could kind of move all over. I think he could play a little bit of third. He's played some second in his early time in Trenton. So, I mean, he's not your prototypical first baseman, big, bulky guy. But it seems like he has some sneaky pop, some sneaky gap power, and he's having a good year in Tampa. So I'm looking forward to seeing him closing out the season. It's been a tough year. I mean, let's face it, Trenton is in second place right now. They're 2 games behind New Hampshire.
who obviously were propelled early by Vlad Jr. and Bo Bichette and Calvin Biggio and all those guys who were the high-profile prospects, not just in the Blue Jays system, but in all of baseball. They're some of the better prospects you'll find, and the Thunder have been with them all year long with really a subpar offense. It's really the pitching that's carried them. They have the lowest ERA in the Eastern League. They have the lowest WHIP in the Eastern League. They have the most strikeouts in the Eastern League, the fewest walks in the Eastern League. It's just the pitching has carried them to where they're at. They have such a big lead in that second playoff spot. They have like a 9.5 game lead. So it looks like it's going to be New Hampshire and Trenton moving forward. But they've really gotten by with just an average offense, probably a league average offense. Guys that have done well, had nice years. Mandy Alvarez has had a nice year. Zach Zahner has been up and down. And that's the thing. The offense, a lot of it is so unpredictable for Trenton because it's kind of been a revolving door all year of guys going up and down between Scranton and Trenton, where you really haven't had the same lineup for longer than a week or two. Guys like Billy Fleming, Avellino, Ryan McBroom, Zach Zahner. Guys have just been going up and down every couple weeks, so it's really hard to keep the same lineup intact and get in a rhythm when you're kind of breaking it up every couple of days and guys are going in and out. And the guys that they have had who have had good years, they've gone up to AAA now at this point. So they're really left with kind of just a cast of offense it's a solid cast, but there's nobody that really, when you take a step back and look at the numbers, there's nobody really having a year that would jump off the paper at you and say, wow, like this guy's having an awesome like minor league player of the year type year. There's nobody having that type of year. I think right now you're just more looking at progress and guys that are going to maybe contribute next year, which is why I would probably just kind of point to Wagner early on, and I don't know if anybody's going to come up in the last month or so, just based on all the movement that's happened in the last week and all the trades that they've made. I mean, Trenton's been playing with only 21 or 22 players for the last week. So, I mean, right now they're playing 3 guys short. I think they're at 22 right now. So who's to say? I'm sure they're going to bring in somebody maybe from Tampa who will be interesting to watch. But it's all about the pitching right now for Trenton.
We'll have to keep an eye on all the great work you're doing down in AA. Matt Kardos, you can follow him on Twitter as you should. You can also see many of his articles on pinstripeprospects.com. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
I appreciate it. No problem. Thanks, Alex.
All right, thanks, Matt, once again for joining us. I know it's rough, Yankees fans, but after seeing the future of pitching in this organization and the farm system in general, you can't help but to feel that this organization is on the right track. And that'll do it for this week's episode of the Pinstripe Prospects Podcast, episode number 64, presented, of course, by our good friends over at Velocity Wings. For Ricky Keeler, Lawrence Krieger, and Matt Kardos, of course, I'm Alex Zeller, thanking you once again for making us a part of your weekly programming. Much love from all of us over at Pinstripe Prospects. Be sure to head over to pinstripeprospects.com and check out some articles this week. And I will see you guys for another edition of the Farm Report on Saturday. See you then.